The council chamber looked like a metal cathedral floating in space. Outside the massive windows, a dying star burned orange and angry. Inside, 300 alien representatives were screaming at each other. Captain Sung sat near the back row with his arms crossed. His dark uniform had Earth's flag on the shoulder, a small blue patch that most aliens ignored. Next to him, Engineer was typing on her data pad, running numbers over and over. At the center podium, a tall alien named was trying to restore order. His voice translator struggled to be heard over the noise. "Please, we must focus. Prime has 8 cycles left." The planet below them was doomed. A massive piece of a dead star was racing toward it like a bullet. Nothing could stop it. The only question was how many people they could save before impact. 47 million civilians, a reptilian delegate hissed. Impossible to move them all. "My calculations show we can evacuate 30%, another alien said, their blue skin flickering with stress patterns. "Maybe 35 if we prioritize the young." "Prioritize," a representative stood up shaking. "You mean choose who dies?" The room erupted again. Aliens argued about ship capacity, safety protocols, and which population centers to abandon. Math projected on the walls showed the same truth over and over. They did not have enough time. They did not have enough ships. Millions would be left behind. Watched it all with tired eyes. He had seen this before during the Mars colony emergency. Everyone talking about what could not be done. Nobody talking about doing it anyway. Stopped typing and looked at him. "The numbers work," she whispered. "Barely, but they work." "You sure?" "No, but we can do it." Stood up. The movement was small, but something about it made the nearest alien stop talking. Then more stopped. Within seconds, the entire chamber had gone quiet, 300 alien faces turning toward the human captain. His compound eyes fixed on him. "Captain Sung, does Earth have input?" Walked down the aisle toward the center. His boots echoed on the metal floor. He could feel every alien watching him, judging him. Humans were new to this council. Young, barely 200 years in space. What could they possibly offer? He reached the podium and looked up at the massive display showing Prime. 47 million red dots representing people who would die. He thought about his grandmother in Seoul, how she survived the floods, how humans always found a way when the way did not exist. "We've got this," he said simply. The silence lasted exactly 2 seconds, then chaos. "Excuse me," leaned forward. "Humans can evacuate Prime, all of it, everyone." A wave of noise crashed over him. Aliens standing, shouting, their translators overlapping into nonsense. The reptilian delegate pointed a clawed finger at him. "You have been in space for barely 2 centuries. Your technology is primitive compared to—" "6 cycles," said, walking up beside. She tapped her data pad and threw the numbers onto the main display. "We can have everyone off that planet in 6 cycles, all 47 million. "Impossible," someone shouted. "Your math is wrong," another added. Raised his front legs for silence. The room settled into an angry murmur. "Captain Sung, the Coalition's best scientists have run every scenario. Our fastest evacuation protocols can save 14 million people at most. You claim you can save them all. With what ships? What technology do humans possess that we lack?" Smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "We don't have better technology. We have better attitude." Attitude. His translator made it sound like a curse word. Expanded her display. "We convert 200 human cargo ships into people carriers. Strip the holds, pack in temporary life support, load them up. We use fast cycles, not perfect cycles. We move them like we're evacuating a burning building, not loading a pleasure cruise." An alien in white robes stood up, voice dripping with contempt. "You would violate every safety protocol in the Galactic Code." "Yes," said flatly. "People would be endangered." "People are already endangered. The planet is about to explode. Studied the human numbers. Your capacity estimates are 40% above coalition safety standards. The risk of system failure is lower than the risk of being smashed by a star fragment, interrupted. We're not aiming for comfortable, we're aiming for alive. A official, her orange skin pale with stress, spoke up. What if something goes wrong? What if ships fail? Turned to face her directly. Then we fix them on the fly in space, whatever it takes. That's not a plan, said. That's gambling with lives. No, said quietly. Leaving 33 million people to die because the paperwork says it's too risky, that's gambling with lives. We're offering certainty. Everyone gets on a ship. Everyone. The chamber fell silent again. On the display, those 47 million red dots blinked slowly. Somewhere down on that planet, real people were looking up at the sky, wondering if help would come. Looked at the officials. This is your world, your people. The decision is yours. The orange-skinned official stood. Her hands were shaking. If there is any chance at all to save them all, she looked at, do it. Do whatever you need to do. Nodded once. Start calling our ships. Already done, she said, showing her pad. 214 vessels are changing course. ETA 22 hours. As walked back up the aisle, he heard mutter something his translator barely caught. Humans, either brilliantly brave or stupidly suicidal. Smiled as they passed. Usually both, she said. The countdown had begun. 6 cycles to do the impossible. But humans had done the impossible before, usually right after someone told them it could not be done. The human fleet started arriving 18 hours later, watched from the orbital station as the ships appeared one by one through jump space. They were not military vessels. They were not even proper passenger ships. They were cargo haulers, mining transports, and colony carriers. Some looked like they had been held together with spare parts and hope. This is your rescue fleet, asked, disbelief in every syllable. Stood at the window, watching a massive freighter named Prospect slide into position. That's the Prospect. She's moved iron ore between asteroid belts for 30 years. Captain runs her. She's a mining ship. Now she's a people ship. On the main screen, they watched the interior of the Prospect. Human workers were cutting apart the cargo holds with plasma torches. Others were welding metal seats directly to the floor in long rows. There was no elegant design, no careful planning, just fast, brutal efficiency. This violates 16 coalition safety codes, said a purple-skinned alien engineer named. He was reading from a data pad, his face twisted in horror. No proper escape pods, inadequate spacing between seats, life support operating beyond recommended capacity. Yep, said, not looking up from her own calculations. We're breaking all of them. This is madness. Engineer Bay walked over, holding a coffee mug that said Mars Colony 2347 on it. She was short, tired-looking, and completely calm. Your safety codes are designed for normal operations. This is not normal operations. Safety protocols exist for a reason. They do, agreed. They're designed to keep people comfortable and protected during routine travel. Our protocols are designed to keep people alive during emergencies. Different goals. Pointed at the screen. You're packing people in like cargo. Yes. What about comfort? What about dignity? Sipped her coffee. Dead people have neither. Would you like to explain to a child why they have to die comfortably instead of live uncomfortably? Opened his mouth, then closed it. On another screen, Logistics Officer Wu Jin was dividing Prime's surface into colored zones. Red, blue, green, yellow. Simple. Each zone got a number. Each transport ship got an assignment. No complicated algorithms, no optimal efficiency calculations. Just clear, fast organization. This is too simplistic, a coalition coordinator complained. Our systems account for population density, infrastructure access, medical needs. Which takes 3 hours to process, Woojin said, not stopping his work. We don't have 3 hours, we have now. He pointed to his color-coded map. Red zone, red ships. Blue zone, blue ships. Anyone can understand it. Anyone can help. But the optimization will get people killed. Speed saves lives. Simplicity saves lives. Your optimization costs time we don't have. Captain appeared on the communication channel. His face was weathered, his hair gray, but his eyes were sharp. The prospect is ready. We can take 12,000. Coalition rating for that vessel is 8,000, noted. Laughed a rough sound. Coalition rating is for comfortable cruising. I'm not offering comfort. I'm offering not dying. We can fit 12,000 if 4,000 are willing to stand. Stand for the entire journey. It's 6 hours to the transfer station. I've stood in longer lines at immigration. His expression hardened. Every person we leave space for is a person we leave behind. You want to tell someone their kid has to die because the person next to them needed more legroom. Had no answer. More ships kept coming. The soul wind, rising hope. Each one got the same brutal conversion. Rip out everything unnecessary. Weld in maximum seating. Push life support to the edge. Get ready to move people fast. A government official came to the command center, flanked by advisors. Her name was, and she looked like she had not slept. We need to discuss the safety measures. No time, said. But our people will be scared, uncomfortable, packed in tight. Maybe some will get hurt in the rush, but they will be alive. Turned to face her. What do you want? Perfect safety for a few or rough safety for everyone? His face twisted with emotion. How can you ask me to choose between safety and survival? I'm not asking you to choose. We already chose. Survival, always survival, softened his voice. Trust us, we've done this before. When? Medical officer spoke up. Typhoon on the Korean coast in 2301. Evacuated 100,000 people in 8 hours. Earthquake in New Jakarta 2328. 200,000 in 12 hours. Mars dome breach 2344. 50,000 in 4 hours. She looked at. We're good at this because we've had to be. Earth made us experts in disaster. But you lost people in those events. Yes, and we learned from every single death. The protocols we're using now were written in blood and grief. They work. Down on Prime, human coordinators were already on the ground. Dahl stood in the capital city's main square with a megaphone and a simple sign showing colored zones. Around him, civilians gathered, frightened and confused. Listen carefully, Dahl's voice boomed, translated into, this will not be comfortable, this will not be pretty, but this will save your life. When your color is called, you move fast. You follow the signs, you get on the ship, that's it. A parent held up a child. What about medical checks? Later, first we get you safe, then we check you. Dahl pointed to the sky where the first transports were descending. Those ships are not fancy, they're not nice, but they fly and they're leaving. You want on or not? The crowd shouted yes. Then we've got this. Red zone line up now. Watched it all from orbit, his compound eyes taking in every screen, every feed. Humans running on foot with direction signs. Humans directing traffic like they were conducting an orchestra of chaos. Ships landing, loading, and lifting off in 20-minute cycles instead of the coalition's standard 2 hours. This should not work, whispered beside him. But it is working, replied. On the main counter, the numbers climbed. 500,000 evacuated. 1 million, 2 million. The human fleet moved like a machine made of determination and duct tape. Stood at the window watching another ship rise from the planet packed with refugees. Day 1, he said quietly. 45 million to go. Walked up beside him. Think they believe us yet? No, but they will. The countdown continued. 5 cycles remaining. Cycle 2 began with what the Coalition called organized chaos and what humans called Tuesday. On Prime's northern continent, Coordinator Sara IM stood in the middle of a processing center that looked like controlled madness. 3,000 were moving through the building in waves. No fancy scanners, no long medical interviews, just fast triage and faster movement. Sora held a tablet and pointed people in directions like she was directing traffic in downtown during rush hour. You left line, you right line, you with the blue bag center. Her voice was hoarse from shouting, but she never stopped. Keep moving, the ship doesn't wait. I clutched 2 children and looked panicked, but we haven't been checked. You will be on the ship, on the station. Later, right now, just move. Sara made eye contact with the parent. I promise you we will check everyone, but if you're dead, medical scans don't matter. Go, Ship 3 loading bay 2. Medical Officer Lee worked the triage station with brutal efficiency. Look at a person for 3 seconds. Ask 2 questions. Make a decision. Move on. A Coalition medical observer watched in horror as processed 50 people in the time Coalition protocols would handle 3. You're skipping the full scan, the observer protested. Yep, didn't look up. Checking for immediate life threats only. Everything else gets handled later. What if they're carrying disease? Then we treat it at the station, but they'll be alive to treat, pointed to an elderly. Can you walk? The alien nodded. Good, green line, next. Above the planet, engineers Jin O and were performing miracles that made Coalition engineers pray to their various gods. The transport carrier was rated for 6,000 passengers. It currently held 9,000, with life support systems screaming warnings. She's not going to hold, said, watching the readouts turn red. She'll hold, Jin replied, rerouting power from non-essential systems. He cut gravity in the cargo sections to reduce strain. He diverted cooling from crew quarters to passenger areas. He made the ship do things it was never designed to do. Life support is at 115% capacity. Which means it's working. Jin grinned at her horrified expression. Coalition ships are over-engineered. They build in safety margins on top of safety margins. We're just using what's actually there. And if you're wrong, then I'm wrong, but if I don't try, 3,000 people stay behind. Jin made another adjustment. She'll hold. Another 2 hours and she docks at the station. Monitored everything from the orbital command center, and what he saw his understanding of how rescues worked. Humans were breaking every rule, cutting every corner, and somehow it was working. The numbers on his screen climbed steadily. 8 million evacuated, 10 million, 12 million. But he also saw the cost. Human coordinators working 20-hour shifts without breaks, ships operating past their limits. System warnings flashing across every monitor. It was like watching someone juggle knives while running through fire. This cannot be sustained, said, his face pale. Look at these stress readings, look at the failure warnings. And look at the evacuation numbers, replied. We're ahead of schedule. But at what cost? Less than leaving people to die. On the southern continent, Coordinator Park had converted an old stadium into a processing center. 30,000 filled the seats while human volunteers, including locals who had learned the system, directed them in groups of 500. It looked like chaos. It sounded like chaos. But every 10 minutes, 500 people left for the landing pads and 500 more entered. This is insane, an official told. There's no order. There's perfect order, you just don't recognize it, pointed to the color-coded sections. Red fills, red leaves, blue fills, blue leaves. Simple, fast, works. People are scared. Of course they're scared. Their planet is dying, but they're moving, which means they're going to live. A group of volunteers approached. They had been watching the humans work and wanted to help. Gave them vests, showed them the color system, and put them to work in 5 minutes. No long training, no certification courses, Just point people that way, keep them moving, don't let anyone stop. By the end of Cycle 2, 20 million people had been evacuated. The stellar fragment was visible now, a growing bright spot in Prime's sky. Every hour it got larger. Every hour the countdown got shorter. Cycle 3 started with a nightmare. The runner, one of the largest transports in the human fleet, suffered a cascade failure in its power systems. The ship was carrying 12,500, far above its rated capacity. When the main reactor started fluctuating, every backup system tried to compensate at once. They failed together. "Runner is in distress," the communication officer announced. "Power at 30% and dropping. Life support failing. They're venting heat." "Stood up, evacuate the ship, transfer passengers to other vessels." "No time," said, already moving. "How long until total failure?" 2 hours, maybe less." "Options." Was already at her console, pulling up ship positions. "We can get 3 vessels close enough to provide auxiliary power, if we link them with transfer cables." "That's insane," interrupted. "You can't transfer power between moving ships. The stress on the hulls, the magnetic interference." "Can be managed," finished. "It'll be ugly, but it'll work. Captain, you close to the runner." His voice came through, calm as always. "Half hour away, you thinking what I think you're thinking." "Buddy system. We link power and life support. Keep them alive until we dock." "Haven't done that since the Mars emergency." "Did it work then?" "Eventually." "Good enough, get moving." Watched as 3 human ships changed course toward the failing runner. This was beyond reckless. This was suicide. Ships did not share power while moving. The physics alone could tear hulls apart, but humans apparently did not care about physics when lives were at stake. On the Prospect, Captain ordered his crew to prepare transfer cables. These were heavy industrial cables meant for stationary connections between stations and ships. Using them between moving vessels was like trying to connect 2 cars with a chain while driving. Engineer Myra Song suited up for external work. She was small, young, and looked terrified. But when asked if she was ready, she nodded once and headed for the airlock. "This is going to be bad," she whispered to herself as the outer door opened, and space flooded her vision. Watched the external cameras as Myra and 3 other engineers launched themselves across the void between ships. They carried magnetic anchors and power cables, moving in the dark like spiders spinning a web between branches in a storm. "She's going to die," whispered. "No," said firmly. "She's going to succeed, because failure is not an option." The external feed showed Myra reaching the runner's hull, her magnetic boots locking onto the metal. Behind her, the other engineers were connecting cables. It was slow, dangerous work. One mistake and they would drift into space. One error and the power surge could kill them. "Connection ready," Myra's voice came through, breathing hard. "Transfer on your mark." Checked her calculations one last time. "Transfer in 3, 2, 1 now." Power flowed from the Prospect into the runner. The cables sparked with energy. Both ships shuddered from the stress. Alarms screamed. But the runner's system steadied. Life support stabilized. "It's working," said, disbelief in her voice. "Of course it is," replied, "because we said it would." On Prime, the evacuations continued. Humans and working together now. The chaos had become routine. The impossible had become procedure. 3 cycles left, and 30 million people still waited for rescue. The linked ships moved through space like a 3-headed beast, power cables connecting them in ways that made coalition engineers physically ill. Myra Song and her team remained on the runner's hull, monitoring the connections while the ship limped toward the orbital station. Inside the runner, 12,000 sat in near darkness as life support ran on borrowed power. They were scared but alive. The human crew moved among them, offering water and calm words. The ship groaned and creaked, but it held together. found standing at the observation window, watching the connected ships approach. You risked 3 vessels to save one. If the connection had failed. It didn't. But it could have. 3 ships lost instead of 1. The mathematics are simple. Turn to face him. Math isn't people. Every person on that ship knows someone could die doing this. They do it anyway. That's what you don't understand. We don't calculate acceptable losses. We calculate how to have no losses. That's not always possible. Doesn't mean we don't try. The runner docked successfully 2 hours later. 12,000 transferred to the station safely. The human engineers who spacewalked between ships were treated for exhaustion and minor injuries. Myra Song slept for 16 hours straight, still wearing her pressure suit. But there was no time to celebrate. Cycle 4 began with the evacuation entering what Wu Jin called the final push. 27 million people were now safe, but 20 million remained on Prime. The stellar fragment filled the sky now, a burning mountain descending in slow motion. Down on the planet's surface, Coordinator Dahl worked in a city that should have been abandoned days ago. But humans did not abandon cities while people still lived in them. He stood in a plaza where 5,000 elderly waited, many too weak to walk quickly. "We need more time," an official said. "These people cannot move fast." "Then we carry them." Dahl activated his comm. "All available personnel to Plaza 7. We need carriers." Within 20 minutes, human volunteers arrived, pilots, engineers, crew members who should have been resting. They partnered with volunteers who had learned the human way. Together, they began helping the elderly to the ships, one person at a time. It was slow, exhausting work, but not one person was left behind. Medical Officer Bay worked a field hospital near the last spaceport. She had been awake for 36 hours. Her hands shook when she wasn't using them, but when a mother brought her a sick child, hands were steady. "Fever, difficulty breathing," the mother said, terrified. Examine the child quickly. Respiratory infection, treatable but serious. In normal times, this would require days of hospital care. "We can treat this on the station. Get on the next ship." "But he's sick, they won't let us." "They will." Mark the mother's boarding pass with a medical code. Show this at the loading gate. They'll get you on a ship with medical facilities. He'll be fine, I promise. The mother clutched the pass like it was made of gold. "Thank you, thank you." After they left, allowed herself 30 seconds of rest. Just 30 seconds with her eyes closed. Then the next patient arrived and she stood up again. Found her there an hour later. He had come down to the planet's surface to see the operation firsthand. What he saw changed something fundamental in his understanding of humans. "You're exhausted," he said too. "Yes." "When did you last sleep?" "Doesn't matter, there's work." "You'll collapse." Later, after, finished treating a cut on his arm and sent them to the loading area. "We rest when everyone's safe. That's the rule." "That's not a rule, that's martyrdom." Looked at him with bloodshot eyes. "Call it what you want, we're still doing it." On the orbital station, coordinated the final logistics like a conductor leading a desperate symphony. Ships arrived, unloaded, and departed in continuous cycles. The station was designed for 10,000 people. It currently held 47,000, with more arriving every hour. "We're over capacity," a station manager warned. "I know. Systems are failing. Sanitation is breaking down. We have food for 3 days at most. The evacuation will be complete in 2 days. We just need to hold together." "And if we can't?" Finally looked at him. "We will because we have to." Cycle 5 began with hope and terror in equal measure. 40 million people were now safe, but 7 million remained on Prime. The stellar fragment was close enough now that it affected the planet's weather. Storms raged across the surface. Winds made landing difficult, but the human ships kept coming. Captain landed the Prospect in wind that should have grounded all flights. His approach was rough, his landing harder, but he set down safely. "Last run," he announced to his crew. "Let's fill her up." In the capital city, the last processing center was run by volunteers who had never slept. Coordinators Sora IM, Park, and Dahl worked side by side with helpers who had learned to move people with human efficiency. They were down to the final thousands. "Elderly and children first," Dahl announced. "Then everyone else. We're not leaving until everyone's gone." A young volunteer, barely adult, approached him nervously. "What about you, the coordinators?" "We go last, always last, that's the job." "But what if?" "There is no what if. We all get out or we keep trying until we do." The volunteer stood, understanding something fundamental about humans in that moment. They did not lead from safety. They led from danger. In orbit, watched the final countdown. 3 hours until impact. 5 ships still on the surface. 6,000 people still loading. The numbers were getting very tight. "We need to start pulling ships out," a coalition advisor urged. "The impact shockwave will destroy anything in the atmosphere." "Not until everyone's loaded." "Captain, be reasonable." "I am being reasonable. Reasonable says we don't leave people behind, clear the channel." He opened a link to all ships on the surface. "All vessels, this is command. You have 2 hours to load and lift. I know you're tired, I know the ships are stressed, but 2 more hours and we're done. We've come this far, let's finish it." Captain's voice came back, rough but determined. "Copy that. Prospect will be wheels up in 90 minutes with a full load." Other captains chimed in with similar reports. They were exhausted, their ships were broken, their crews were running on nothing but will, but they were going to finish the job. On the ground, the last boarded a ship 73 minutes later. It was an elderly woman who moved slowly, helped by Dahl himself. She turned to look at the city one last time, at the home she would never see again. "Thank you," she whispered to Dahl. "Safe travels," he replied, then activated his comm. "Last civilian loaded, coordinators boarding now." The final human transport lifted off with 40 minutes to spare. As it climbed through the atmosphere, everyone aboard, human and alike, looked down at the planet below. It looked peaceful from this height. Beautiful. It was hard to believe it would be gone in less than an hour. "Final count," said in the command center, her voice shaking slightly. 47,200,000 evacuated. Stared at the number. "That's more than the initial estimate." "Birth rate," said with a tired smile. "Bobbies don't wait for evacuations." The last ship docked with 20 minutes to spare. As the refugees transferred to the station, allowed himself one moment of relief, one moment where he closed his eyes and breathed. Then he opened them and started coordinating the fleet's departure from orbit. The job was not done until everyone was safe at the transfer stations, and humans did not stop until the job was done. The fleet moved away from Prime in a long convoy of mismatched ships, human transports, coalition vessels, and everything in between. They were battered, overloaded, and running on systems that should have failed days ago. But they flew. On the command station's observation deck, Sung stood alone, watching the planet they had just saved shrink in the distance. The stellar fragment was visible now as a bright streak descending toward the world. In 30 minutes it would impact. In 30 minutes Prime would cease to exist. Footsteps behind him. Approached, his compound eyes reflecting the distant planet. For a long moment neither spoke. "I was certain you would fail," said finally. "I know. I calculated every scenario, every possibility. Your plan should not have worked." "But it did." Turned to face the human captain. "Why? What do humans possess that allows them to ignore mathematics and physics and probability?" Considered the question carefully. "We don't ignore them. We just refuse to let them be the final word. Your people saw an impossible problem and calculated the best compromise. We saw an impossible problem and decided to make it possible anyway. That's not logical. No, it's human. On the main screen, the stellar fragment struck Prime. The impact was silent in space, but the visual was devastating. A flash of light that turned the entire planet into a temporary star. The shockwave spread outward in a ring of destruction. Where a world had been, now there was only expanding debris. 47 million watched their home die. Some cried, some prayed, some simply stared in silence, but they were alive to watch it. That was the difference. In the medical bay, Bay finally slept, collapsed in a chair with a half-empty coffee mug still in her hand. Around her, patients rested in beds, recovering from the evacuation. They were sick, injured, exhausted, but alive. Engineer Myra Song was getting a commendation she did not want. The coalition wanted to give her a medal for the spacewalk between ships. She refused it 3 times before Captain made it an order to accept. "Let them give you the shiny thing," he said. "Then we can all go back to work. I don't need recognition. I just did my job." "I know. That's why they want to recognize you." Coordinator Dahl found Sarah Im and Park in the station's makeshift cafeteria, eating the first meal they had had in 2 days. They looked like they had been through a war, which, in a way, they had. "We did it," said, her voice numb with exhaustion. "Yeah," Dahl replied, staring at his food without eating it. "We did." Sarah looked at both of them. "When do we stop shaking?" "When we're not running on pure adrenaline anymore," Dahl said. "Give it another day." They sat in comfortable silence, 3 people who had helped move millions and were too tired to feel proud about it yet. That would come later. Right now, they just needed to sit and breathe and remember they were also alive. Found still on the observation deck an hour after the impact. The debris field that had been Prime was spreading slowly, a glittering cloud of what used to be a world. "Final numbers are in," she said. 47.2 million evacuees, 14 ships damaged, 3 total losses but all crews rescued. Human casualties, 0. Casualties during evacuation, 0. Total casualties, 0. Nodded slowly. What was the coalition's original estimate? 14 million saved, 33 million lost. So we saved 33 million people who were supposed to die. According to their math, yes. Smiled, tired but genuine. Good math. Called an emergency session of the Galactic Council 3 days later. Representatives from dozens of species gathered, many of whom had been critical of the human rescue plan. They expected an apology, or at least an acknowledgement of the risks taken. What they got was different. Stood at the podium with and the human team behind him. "This council owes humanity an apology," he began. "We doubted them, we called them reckless, we said their plan would fail and get people killed." He paused. "We were wrong, completely, absolutely wrong." Murmurs ran through the chamber. Humans evacuated 47 million people in 6 cycles with 0 casualties. They did this by breaking every rule we consider sacred. They overloaded ships, skipped safety protocols, worked without rest, and risked everything. Looked directly at. And they succeeded where we would have failed, not despite their methods but because of them. A coalition representative stood. Surely this was exceptional circumstances. "All emergencies are exceptional circumstances," interrupted. "That's why they're emergencies. You can't handle a crisis with normal rules. You need crisis rules. But the risks are always going to exist. The question is whether you risk some people to save others, or risk everything to save everyone. We choose the second option every time." Stepped forward. "Your safety protocols are designed for 0 casualties during normal operations. That's good for normal times. But in disasters, you need protocols designed for 0 people left behind. Different goals, different methods." "This council needs to study your techniques," another representative said. "Document your procedures." "No," said firmly. You don't need procedures. You need the right mindset. We didn't save those people because we have better protocols. We saved them because we refused to accept that we couldn't. Address the Council. I propose a new designation for rescue operations beyond coalition capability. Human Standard Crisis Response. When the situation is impossible by our calculations, we call in humans who don't believe in impossible. The vote was unanimous. Months later, received a message at his office on Earth. Another crisis, another impossible situation. A mining colony trapped by a collapsing cave system. Coalition engineers said rescue was impossible. The Council was requesting human assistance. Read the message, then looked at who was working at the next desk. We've got another one. She glanced up. How impossible. They're saying it can't be done. Smiled, so standard Tuesday. Pretty much, round up the team. Already messaging them. Within hours, the same human ships that saved Prime were spinning up their engines again. Captain was welding new patches on the prospect. Engineers Jin-O and were calculating impossible solutions. Coordinators Dahl, Sara, and were packing their gear. The galaxy had learned something important. When the situation was hopeless, when the math said it could not be done, when every rational calculation pointed to failure, there was one group that would still say 3 words. We've got this. Not as a promise, not as a guarantee, but as a declaration of intent. A warning to the universe itself that humans did not accept limitations, did not surrender to probability, and absolutely did not leave people behind. The coalition had their rules and protocols and safety margins. Humans had something more powerful, the stubborn, irrational, magnificent belief that impossible just meant nobody had tried hard enough yet. Stood at his office window looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, people were trapped, scared, and hopping for rescue. The coalition had said it could not be done, which meant it was exactly the kind of job humans were built for. He grabbed his jacket and headed for the spaceport. After all, someone had to show the galaxy what impossible really meant. And humans had gotten very, very good at making the impossible look easy.